Right there. Hello and welcome to Lopez Power Lopez movie review. Um, I got another really good movie today that I just watched, but I think it deserves to be talked about. I think it's kind of, again, underrated, similar to Hook, is Lethal Weapon. Now, I know it was a pretty big franchise in the 80s and 90s, but it's not really talked about today. Like, you hear people talking about Die Hard, and you hear people talking about Beverly Hills Cop, but you don't hear people talk that much about Lethal Weapon. Now, I'm not going to talk about the franchise. Right now, I don't have. I only saw the first one today, and I felt like doing a video on the first one. Maybe I'll do videos on the other movies. I won't make it like one long video. I have seen the other movies, but just need to if I do it. Actually, I haven't seen the second one. I've seen 3 and 4 and 1, but I should watch the second, third, and all, and I'll rewatch all of them again. But I watched the first one today, right now, right like this night, and I think it's a movie that does need to be talked about because I really like Lethal Weapon. It's kind of the movie that you kind of made the buddy cop movie what it is today. I mean, I know buddy, probably, I know probably there's been buddy cop movies before Lethal Weapon, but I noticed them a lot more after Lethal Weapon. I think it's a movie that really kicked off the buddy cop movie. And if you want to see a great example of a buddy cop movie, watch Lethal Weapon. Now, there's some movies that don't really get it right, but I think this movie does get it right. Probably because it's kind of the one that redid it. Similar to how like Die Hard was the movie that redid action movies for a new generation. One man Lone Ranger action movies. Someone like who's alone in an area to fight bad guys and save hostages, and he's the only one that knows what he's doing. Similar to that, like for example, after Die Hard, I know we're talking about Lethal Weapon, but I'm just using an example. Like for example, Die Hard. After Die Hard, you got Under Siege. The movies are very similar. The Rock, Con Air, Air Force One, Speed, all those wrong place at the wrong time. Die Hard 2, all those wrong place at the wrong time movies. Now with Lethal Weapon, it's just very similar because you got after Lethal Weapon, you got Die Hard with a Vengeance, it's interesting because Lethal Weapon and Die Hard movies are actually kind of competing franchises at the time. But it's funny how Die Hard influenced a lot of action movies afterwards. That the third one would be influenced how Lethal Weapon probably influenced a lot of movies, and afterwards you got Die Hard with a Vengeance, which is another buddy cop movie. 21 Jump Street, the nowadays 21 Jump Street, a great buddy cop movie. Um, Who Framed Roger Rabbit came after this. It's kind of a buddy cop movie because you got the two rabbits. There's just a lot of, but after this one, you see a good pattern. And I'm sure there's some. I've seen a couple. I can't remember. I can't name them right now. Kind of tired. That right off the bad of right. Other than that, but I know that are bad. But the ones that did right. Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Die Hard with a Vengeance, the 21 Jump Street movies, and 22 Jump Street movies. Great buddy cop movies. Um, and, like, I'm sure there's more of them. I have to think about them. Lethal Weapon 2, 3, 4. I don't know. A lot of people, it's funny because Lethal Weapon 1 and 2 are considered really good, and 3 and 4 are considered kind of crappy. I actually like 3 and 4. I know I meant the first one is better, but I like 3 and 4. Now, the first movie is also a kind of a movie that relaunched Mel Gibson, got Mel Gibson's career started. I know he was in other stuff, but like other franchise besides Mad Max, This was the other franchise that got Mel Gibson started. You saw him in Braveheart after this. You saw him in Pocahontas. You saw him in Conspiracy Theory and Ransom. Signs. He was huge after the Lethal Weapon movies, and I think that's the movie kind of kicked off his movie career. Hold on, let me just take a drink of water because my mouth is parched. I'm covering this, so I'm not advertising. Tea, I should say. But anyway, the Lethal Weapon movies, the first one, again, is a great example of a buddy cop movie. But what's good about Lethal Weapon is it's simple. Simple movie. Like, it does get a little complicated, but overall the story's pretty straightforward. And it doesn't get complicated like a lot of cop movies nowadays. Like, I just saw Black Mass. And I know that's not a cop movie, but it deals a lot with cop stuff. So over time, it gets kind of convoluted. And I know Lethal Weapon's a comedy and all that. But even, it's kind of a serious comedy. It's a comedy that you can take seriously, but you can have chuckles at it. Um, it's not that complicated. Like I saw another movie I saw that was really complicated was Walk Among the Tombstones with Liam Neeson. And it's just like one like I don't know, it's like after a while it's not interesting because it's just so many weird like convoluted parts in it. Now Lethal Weapon is pretty straight. I mean, it does have a little bit, but I notice when it starts to get like, oh my god, that they even acknowledge like this is getting a little too complicated, and it still stays pretty straightforward. Mel Gibson again is really good in this movie. He plays a cop with a death wish. His name is Riggins, and it's again at least again a great story arc. Suicidal man because his wife died, but later in the movie he wants to live. He has something to fight for because he's found a friend. This movie shows how powerful friendship is, and I think, and when I ask somebody if you want to see a good movie of friendship, watch Lethal Weapon. Because how these guys' characters grow together, it's really enjoyable. At first they don't like each other, but as the movie goes along, they have to learn to deal with each other, and at the end of the year, they're like, you know what, you're not bad, and so it's kind of fun in that aspect. Uh, Danny Glover is great. He plays a cop, kind of past his prime. He's turned 50. He's kind of past his prime. Mel Gibson is like right in his prime. He's like the hothead cop wants to that really gets at it. He just wants to get in a shooting and just deal with it in a fast paced action way, and because he's the cop in his prime, he's the hothead young cop, whereas Mel Gibson Danny Glover is the slow, kind of past his prime cop, just wants to take things easy, make things easy. He doesn't want to cause too much. He just wants to have a steady career. Um, he's like, I'm getting too old for this type of stuff. And it's funny. It's kind of a fun line. And it's kind of, a line you hear a lot. It's kind of cliche now, like, oh, I'm getting too old for this. And, it sounds like a cliche now when you watch the movie. Oops, pop-ups. But I think it's the movie again that started it. Like, oh man, I'm getting too old for this stuff, type of thing. And Danny Glover is really good. He has to protect his family, but again, he also has a good character arc too because he learns to help this Riggins on the way of solving this case, and you see their friendship go on from there. Again, there's a lot during the late '80s. A lot of cop action movies like Die Hard and this movie and Die Hard 2 and no, that's not a cop movie. I almost said Jaws' Revenge. Kind of took place around Christmas. I was kind of like, I think that's the thing that Die Hard kind of stole from this. The whole Christmas thing. That was an interesting cliche they had in the '80s. Have action happen on Christmas. I don't know why that they did that a lot. But it's I'm not saying it's a bad cliche, but it was very often you'd see something like that in the 80s. Gary Busey plays the bad guy. He's great as ever. I love Gary Busey. He's just an over the top guy. He's actually kind of under the top in this movie. He does have a couple over the top scenes, like he shows that he feels no pain when a lighter's against his forearm. But other than that, he's kind of laid back in this movie, but he's still great. Great villain. He's not the main. Well, he is kind of the main villain. He becomes the main villain. At first, it's this one drug lord, but later, as the movie progresses, Gary Busey becomes more of the antagonist. He's kind of like the he's kind of like Regan's antithesis. He's kind of the opposite of Regan. He's the person that Regan has to fight. And, they're kind of, opposite. And this movie has a lot of funny parts in it, especially because, Regan has a death wish, so he doesn't let him drive and stuff like that. Danny Glover's character, McBarato, something like that. And, he has to try to save the guy who's trying to commit suicide by falling off with the ankles. I don't know. There's a lot of funny parts like that in this movie. It's a movie with a lot of. It's a simple movie, but it's just so entertaining to watch because these two characters have so much charisma together. And you know why? Is because their characters grow throughout their relationship grows throughout the movie, and it makes it a little more impactful, makes it a little more great charisma. And like, for example, the 21 Jump Street movies are kind of like the Lethal Weapon movies of today. They're kind of have that same thing. But it's done a little bit better here because I think even though this has a lot of funny parts, it's done more in a serious manner. It's not quite a comedy. It's an action movie, but it's got serious parts. But as I would say, it's kind of a serious comedy. It's not quite a dark comedy, but it's a serious comedy. And I think that seriousness of realism to it, I guess you could say, makes it a little more entertaining. Makes it a little more interesting because in the 21 Jump Street movies, it's kind of like an exaggerated, stereotypical cop thing with all the technology and stuff like that. And with this movie, it's kind of and although the movies kind of get like that as they progress, with the first movie, it's done with a little more realism. They feel like real cops. I guess that's what I'm saying. It's the reason why it's so impactful to watch these characters grow, which creates a lot of character charisma together, is because they feel like real cops. They really do feel like, the donut eating, cigarette smoking, stakeout, cops who just, want to get home but has to deal with stuff they don't want to. They feel like real cops in this movie. So it's directed pretty good. The other Lethal Weapon movies are pretty good, but I think the first one has more of a sense of, because each movie kind of tries to become more of a comedy, I think, as if I can remember. And because this movie has a little more realism to it, it's still got a lot of funny parts, but it's done with more realism. It's done with more charisma. I think it makes it the best of the Lethal Weapon franchise. That's the first one, and then that's typically it. The first one's the best. Lethal Weapon. Also, this movie also has great conflict, and this movie also has likable characters. But this one movie that gets kind of likable, I mean, both Riggins and McBraw are very likable, is Danny McBra's character, McBardo's character, Danny Glover's character, McBardo's family. Usually the family in the movie, if there's a cop, with the family, they're kind of brushed over. They're kind of, you only see him for once, and maybe if they're in trouble, he has to come and rescue you, and you're supposed to care about something we've only seen once. With this movie, they establish this family. You get to know this family, and when they're in trouble, it makes us care a little bit more because we know about these characters. I think it's a lot of cop movies. They try to do a cliche like that. The family gets caught up in the action. But the thing is, we only see the family in those other movies for one scene. And then when they do get, captured, before they get, mixed up in things, and when they get mixed up in things, we don't really care because we didn't really get to know them. The family we really get to know. You know, there's the teenage daughter that kind of has a crush on Riggins, and you know the mischievous kids and the smart aleck wife. You know, and but we get to know these characters, this McBrothers family, and when they get mixed up with the bad guys, we care a lot more because we've known these characters and they're developed so well. So that's one props to this movie. Um, Not really much else to say. I think it's a really good movie. It's definitely the movie that kind of kicked off the '80s buddy cop movie, and also kind of the cop drama in general. Cop action movie like we got Die Hard and uh, and Beverly. Actually, no, Beverly Hills Cops was before this. But anyway, that's kind of, you know, it's a good, if you love cop movies and you love kind of a cop movie with a comedic edge, but also with a sense of realism. You know, not something too action packed, but also not something too boring. It feels more realistic, more likable. I'd say this movie is definitely for you. I give this movie a 3.5 out of 4 stars. I give it a B plus. It's a good. I give it an A minus. Movie I give an A minus. It's a really good buddy cop movie. Great uh, career start for Mel Gibson. I know he was in Mad Max, but this is kind of what got him used to more of general public because Mad Max kind of had a cult following along the way. Um, so yeah, so I'll see you in the next guys in the next review. God bless you, and take care.